If you'd driven past that bus stop that night, you probably would have looked right through me, just another woman in a thin dress shivering in the Ohio snow and pretending she still had somewhere to be. 3 hours earlier, I had a husband, a house, a whole future built on baby name lists and holiday plans. And then he called me broken because I couldn't give him a child and slid divorce papers across the table like he was closing out a tab. So I ended up on that cracked plastic bench with a cheap canvas bag at my feet and my whole life stuffed inside it, pretending to wait for a bus that wasn't coming, while a voice in my head kept repeating, "No man is really going to want a woman who can't give him children." My name is Hannah, and that was the sentence my husband Daniel left me with as parting advice. We'd been the couple that did everything right. College sweethearts, little house in the suburbs, Pinterest boards full of nursery pictures. And for a while I honestly thought life would just follow the script. Then, month after month, nothing happened. Then came the doctor visits and the blood tests and the quiet drives home, and every appointment took a little piece of me I couldn't seem to get back. The day the specialist finally said the word infertility, she kept talking about options and other paths to a family. But when I looked at Daniel, his face went flat, in a way I recognized, like a guy whose order just came out wrong and is already thinking about sending it back. After that, my body stopped feeling like my own and turned into a broken project we were managing together, and every negative test felt less like sad news and more like proof that I was failing at the one job everyone assumed I'd do. One afternoon, he called me into the kitchen, papers already lined up, and said almost businesslike, "I don't want to waste my best years on a dead end. Hannah, and I want a real family with real kids, and you can't give me that. I'm just being honest." And when I asked, "So I'm the dead end," he didn't even blink. He just mentioned a younger woman from his gym who understood his priorities, pushed the pen toward me, and tossed out that last line about no man ever really wanting me, like he was doing me a favor by saying it. I signed where his lawyer had highlighted, packed a bag with one change of clothes, and my charger called the women's shelter, and heard the word full-checked cheap motels, and realized my savings would last about 2 nights, and eventually I walked to the bus stop, because at least it had a roof and strangers don't ask you to explain your whole life. By the time that SUV rolled up, snow was blowing sideways, my phone was blinking on one red bar, and I was so tired that "I'm fine" came out of my mouth on autopilot, when the driver leaned over and asked, "You waiting on the 14? He checked the schedule taped to the shelter, frowned, and said, "Last one came through 20 minutes ago, next one's in the morning. You got anywhere safe to go?" And before I could lie again, a little girl in a purple coat rolled down the back window and called, "Dad, she's freezing. We can't just leave her." His oldest son pushed his glasses up and added, "You always say if we see someone who needs help, we help," and you could see the moment his own rule boxed him in. He sighed, put the car in park, stepped into the snow, and said, "I'm Michael. We live a couple blocks from here. It's 5 degrees, and you're sitting here in a dress. Can we please get you somewhere warm?" I muttered, "I can't just get in some random guy's car," because of course I did, and he nodded, jerked his thumb toward the back seat, and said, "Totally fair, which is why I brought witnesses, 3 kids and a golden retriever. We are aggressively ordinary, I promise." The smallest boy popped his head up and shouted, "We have hot chocolate." And for the first time that day, I actually laughed, this cracked little sound that surprised me as much as it did them. Michael softened his voice and said, "Look, just come to our place, warm up, charge your phone, eat something if you still want to leave. After that, I'll pay for a cab wherever you say. No strings, you can take a picture of my plate and text it to whoever you trust. I just can't drive away and pretend I didn't see you." The truth was I had nobody to text, and nowhere better to go, and I knew if I stayed on that bench all night, the cold might decide things for me, so I looked at his kids staring at me like I was a stray dog. They wanted to bring home and said very quietly, "Okay." In the SUV, it smelled like fries and crayons and wet dog. The kids introduced themselves on the short drive. Lily in the purple coat, Noah with the glasses, Ben the youngest. And by the time we turned into their driveway, a small two-story with a crooked snowman out front and tired Christmas lights still hanging on, I could feel my fingers again, and also something I hadn't felt in a long time, like I wasn't invisible. Their house was warm and messy boots kicked off by the door drawings taped on the fridge, and I stood there hugging my bag while Michael pointed to the couch and said, "House rule, anyone that cold gets first pick of the blankets." Then a little softer, "I can grab you some sweats too, they were my wife's. She passed last year, she was about your size, she'd be mad if I didn't share." The kids went quiet at that word wife, but the room still felt steady and kind. Like grief lived there but didn't run the place, and somehow that was enough for me to sit down and let myself be warm. Later that night, after the kids thundered upstairs and the dog finally flopped at my feet, Michael sat at the far end of the couch and said, "You don't owe me your story. I can take you to a motel in the morning, and we never have to talk again. But if you need to say it out loud so it stops chewing on you, I'm here." Maybe it was the heat finally reaching my bones. Maybe it was the way his house felt unpolished and real. But I started talking. About the years of trying the doctors, the way Daniel's hand went cold when he heard the word infertile about that last sentence he threw at me on his way out. When I ran out of words, my tea was cold and my throat hurt, and I was braced for the polite nod, the quiet judgment. Instead, Michael blew out a breath and said, "I'm going to be honest, I kind of want to have a conversation with your ex in a dark parking lot," which dragged a laugh out of me I didn't know I had left. Then he added, "You are not broken, your body didn't follow the plan that sucks, but it doesn't make you defective." I glanced toward the stairs and said, "Easy for you to say you have 3 kids." And he shrugged and said, "Yeah, and none of them share my DNA." That was my first real twist with Michael. Sitting there while the dog snored, he told me how he and his wife, Rachel, had gone through the same clinics, and hope and heartbreak, how they finally realized they were grieving an idea instead of noticing real kids who already needed a home, how they adopted Noah, then Lily, then Ben, and then he looked at me and said, "They are my children in every way that matters. Biology is paperwork. Love is the job." Something in me loosened at that, not healed, but shifted like Daniel's sentence wasn't the only story in the room anymore. A snowstorm settled in over the city, so one night in their guest room turned into several, and every time I tried to leave, one of the kids pulled me back into real life with a lost shoe, or a math crisis, or a dance routine that absolutely needed an audience. On the 4th morning, I said, "I really should go figure something out." And Michael shook his head and said, "Or we could talk about an actual plan." He told me he was running a financial consulting firm from his home office, that since Rachel died, he'd been juggling clients and lunchboxes and dentist appointments and grief and dropping balls everywhere. Then he said, "I was already looking for someone to help with the kids and the house, not as charity, as a job salary room, and board time for you to get your feet under you, and honestly, they already adore you, so if you want it, it's yours." I stared at him and said, "You met me at a bus stop." And he just smiled and said, "And then I watched you get Lily to bed, calm Noah down, and convince Ben that broccoli are tiny trees. That's more than I know about most people I hire." And pride wanted me to say no, but reality didn't. So I took a breath and said, "Okay, but if I mess this up, you have to promise to fire me." And he laughed and said, "Deal." The months after that didn't look magical from the outside. They looked like cereal on the floor, school pickup lines, and permission slips, but in the middle of that noise, I slowly started to feel like a person again. You know what I mean? Lily reached for my hand in parking lots. Noah slid his homework over with a quiet, "Can you check this, Baton?" Ben claimed my lap like it was his, and my days stopped being measured by test results. With a steady roof over my head, I signed up for night classes in early childhood education, sitting in rooms full of teenagers and realizing my brain still worked, that I could build a future that had nothing to do with pregnancy. Michael didn't make big speeches about it. He just moved meetings so I could go stacked my textbooks on the counter, told the kids, "Hannah has homework too, we don't bug her unless there's blood." And every small thing like that scraped a little more of Daniel's voice out of my head. About a year in, he came home with that tight look people get when opportunity shows up with strings and said, "There's a client in Dallas who wants me there for 6 months. It could change the business, but I can't disappear on the kids." And before I could think, I heard myself say, "What if we all went?" He stared, sat down, and said, "Then I need to tell you something first." And when he admitted he'd fallen in love with me somewhere between forgotten picture days and science projects, that it wasn't boss nanny gratitude, but real want you in my future. Love, I felt the whole room tilt, so I told him the truth too. That I'd been trying not to fall for him since the 3rd time he sat on the floor after a 12-hour day, so Ben could beat him at Mario Kart. That I still heard Daniel in my head, but it was getting harder to believe him every time I watched Michael be a dad. Michael just shook his head and said, "For the record, I already have kids. I don't need you to give me a family. I want you to share this one." And at that messy kitchen table, the word broken finally stopped feeling like it belonged to me. We did go to Dallas. It was hot and loud and exactly what we needed. And when we moved back home, he proposed in that same kitchen with flour on his nose and the kids filming on a phone while he said, "Honestly, I chose you the night I pulled over at that bus stop. This is just me catching up." And I said yes before he finished. Years later, I sat in a folding chair at Lily's graduation and listened to her say, "Before she became my mom, someone told her she was broken because she couldn't have kids and threw her away. If he hadn't done that, she never would have been at that bus stop when my dad drove by." And it hit me that the worst day of my life had been the doorway into hers. Not long after that, I ran into Daniel in a parking lot. He told me his second marriage had fallen apart, and that he was sorry for how he treated me. And I realized in that moment that I didn't need his apology to be whole. I just told him, "I hope you learn to be better for the people still in your life," and went home to mine. So now I'm curious what you think. Is infertility ever a good enough reason to throw someone away? Would you have trusted a stranger with 3 kids and a golden retriever, or taken your chances with the cold? Do you think I should have given Daniel more of my time? Or are some doors supposed to stay closed once you finally heal? Tell me what you think really makes a family, how much biology should matter, the worst or best thing anyone has ever said about your worth. Drop your thoughts and your stories in the comments, because you never know who might be reading them in their own bus stop moment, trying to decide if they're broken or if they're just about to turn the page.